And participants have now started arriving at the National Convention. It's taking place at UNISA's main campus. President Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, set to give the opening address around 11 o'clock this morning. Let's take you live to my colleague Iman Rupeti, who is there for us. Iman, tracking a whole range of guests that here have been arriving, eminent persons, delegates, civil society groups. What's the mood like there at 9 o'clock?
Well, it looks like the shopping mall on payday, Michelle, is what I can say is the best characterization, because it is busy and there are a lot of people moving. The question is, what happens when they converge inside the Great Hall here at the Winnie Madikizela Mandela building? What are those talks going to look like? We are T-minus half an hour away from the start of this event. A lot about today is not just about contemporary history in South Africa. It is also about how we started our democracy, those critical years between 1990 and 1994. Someone who was there at the inaugural National Dialogue was Roelf Meyer, who is now the co-chair of the Eminent Persons Group. Roelf, I know that I accosted you in the halls because it just struck me that it was so important to have this conversation with you, because you can draw an arc for us between that moment and this moment. What are some of the similarities, do you think, that exist in bringing together people who didn't want to be together to forge a new South Africa and an interim constitution? You were at the time, during the apartheid years, the Minister of Constitutional Development.
There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. The first difference is today is far more relaxed. There are less tensions, and we can socialize almost during this event. But it's important that we remind ourselves of where we were coming from. In those years, we had to come together. We had to find a way forward, and dialogue was the answer, because that brought the answer through the new constitution of South Africa. And it took us 4 years, if you will recall, to actually get to that point of agreement on the new constitution. Now, it's a reset in a certain way, 30 years later, to say to ourselves, how can we improve? How can we do better than what we have experienced over the last 30 years?
I'm going to talk in a moment about the burden of this moment, because we cannot deny that there is a burden on this moment. But I want to reflect on, again, this analogy between your role then in the old administration, having to talk to the incoming administration, and draw a line between that and the DA, for example, pulling out. In a sense, they've come together in a kind of way that echoes that moment between 1990 and 1994. They're not a part of this. So how do you rationalize the role of those political parties who say, we don't want to be a part of this?
Well, we had some parties, as you will recall, in that period also that didn't participate, or who were not always there, who also withdrew and stayed out. And at the last minute they came back. I would like to make an appeal to all parties concerned that it's important that they participate. They must show up in the interest of South Africa and in the interest of South Africans. They must be seen to participate in this process, because it belongs to all of us. At that stage, we started off as opponents, serious opponents. Some would have called it enemies. That is how we started the process of dialogue in the 1990s, and it was extremely difficult. The first experience was actually the National Peace Accord. People forget it. We had such a high level of political violence in the country in the early 1990s, after the release of Madiba, that we had to first find a way to bring peace to the local communities, to the villages, to the
we think
townships.
Of places like Richmond, right?
Absolutely.
But also we think about that moment in 1992, Codesa, the crisis that erupted there. We saw the World Trade Center being broken into effectively by members of the AWB, led by Eugene Terreblanche. Are you, in recollecting just some of the fractions and the fractures and the friction of that moment, are we expecting any of that to emerge during the journey into a national dialogue, which so far has not been easy?
So far, I haven't detected any of the same, but we must realize there are people on the margins that have other ideas than you and I might have. What saved us during that period in the 1990s was the fact that we succeeded in building a strong center, a common ground for the majority to associate and align themselves with. And through the strong center, we succeeded in marginalizing the extremists, both on the left and the right. And I think that is where South Africa has to reset itself also today.
Can we get there, given the way things are right now?
I think so. We became fractured, unfortunately, over a period of time in the last decade or so. But I think it's possible to bring us together again. And that is why this dialogue is so important, because if we can find a common ground between all South Africans, or at least the majority, then we have a path forward.
But here's something for you. We're spending all this money. We're going to the people. Our understanding is that even a woman who's living in the furthest reaches of South Africa in a deep rural setting will have her access to have her voice amplified and heard, because we know that people have voices. They just need to be amplified. That if you don't do the things that people are saying we must do, and we've got many ways to see this already. We've got voting, we have got political representation, so we understand where South Africa is heading. That if we do not turn the corner after this national dialogue process, South Africa is going to be in possibly a worse position than where we're standing at today, here on the 15th of August.
That is possible, and that is why this exercise is so important. That is why we have to regroup. That is why we have to unite and say to ourselves, where is it that we want to really go, as far as that person you're describing and everybody else. We had that opportunity also again back in the 1990s, where we had to consult about the content of the Constitution. I can recall how we went out weekends in doing rallies in rural communities, way out in the dust stadiums of Sekhukhune or wherever. And we there united a common vision where people said, okay, we trust you. You can go forward. We believe in you. At the moment, we lack that trust. We lack the trust in politicians. We lack the trust in the elected representatives. So we have to reunite.
Yeah. Roelf, thank you so much for stopping by, because I know you also have a busy morning, and you'll see in the back, thanks again, you'll see in the back a lot of people you would instantly recognize, members of South Africa's cabinet. The question is, given that high visibility, how is the promise of representing the voice of ordinary South Africans going to be amplified in this setting? There is a 2-hour session where we will hear the voices of civil society, but is that enough over a 3-day weekend? That's among the criticisms, Michelle. I guess we're going to have to see and walk this journey together, chapter by chapter. It's back to you.